Hi, I'm John Hayes. I'm a certified bankruptcy specialist in Southern California, and I am an adjunct professor at the University of West Los Angeles School of Law. I'm teaching a basic bankruptcy class this semester. This is the spring semester of 2021. So this video is designed for my students and for lawyers who are relatively new to the bankruptcy world. I mean, it's pretty basic discussion today on exemptions. So this is going to be part two of the discussion of exemptions. Part one, I sort of explained that bankruptcy is federal law created by Congress in Washington, D.C. But what Congress put into the bankruptcy code is a list of exemptions in section 522D, as in door. And Congress also said, though, that a person filing bankruptcy can use the exemptions in their state if that's what the debtor wants. And they put in there that states can opt out, meaning that the states can pass a law, which California did, and say that you can't use the exemptions in section 522D. You have to use exemptions that are created by the legislature in California. So what I want to pick up on that a little bit more, but what I thought I would talk about in part two is how does this actually work, you know, in a chapter 7. How does exemptions fit into the chapter 7? So as I've mentioned before on other videos that I've done a bunch of times, I'm sure, you file bankruptcy by filling out a whole lot of forms, roughly 60 pages, 50, 60 pages, and the clerk stamps filed, and that's how the bankruptcy case starts. One of the forms is called A. There's an A and a B. That's Schedule A and B. That's where you list all your property. Schedule C is where you claim your exemptions. In the best world, everything listed on A and B will also be listed on C. You'll be telling the trustee, look, everything I own is exempt, buddy. So the exemptions on Schedule C can be objected to by the trustee or by creditors, but the exemption period is fairly short. The objection period is fairly short. The objections have to be filed within 30 days after the meeting of creditors ends. So if there's a continued meeting of creditors, then the 30 days doesn't start until the meeting of creditors ends. But if the 30 days runs, the exemptions are sort of written into stone with a couple of exceptions. So, but how does it work? Let's pick an example. If I file bankruptcy, I have this old truck. You know, let's say my old truck is worth $15,000. And let's say that under California law, the exemption is $5,000. It's not, and California exemption law is really weird, but let's just assume that the truck is worth 15, I claim a $5,000 exemption. So let's assume that the trustee sells the truck. So he would sell it for $15,000, presumably, that's what it's worth. He would pay all of the selling costs, and he'd give me $5,000 because I claimed a $5,000 exemption in the truck. Let's assume that the truck is worth $20,000 and I owe $10,000 to Ford Motor Credit. the trustee would sell the truck for 20. He would pay Ford Motor Credit out of the proceeds. He would pay the selling costs. He would give me the next 5,000, and then he would keep whatever's left and eventually give it to the creditors, the unsecured creditors of the estate. All right. In the real world too, by the way, the trustee would call me, say, look, I don't want to sell your truck, but I'm the trustee, that's my job. Why don't you buy it from me, Hayes? And the truck is worth 15. Why don't you just give me 10,000 or even 9, because he wouldn't have to pay selling costs. Why don't you just give me $10,000? Because if he sells it for 15 and he has to give me 5, he's going to end up with 10, right? So why don't I just give him 10? That's very common in Chapter 7 cases. All right, but same thing if the truck is worth 20 and I owe 10, so he's got to give me 5 out of the proceeds, and again there would be selling costs. So what he might call me and say, why don't you give me 4 and keep the truck, keep making the car payments and get on with your life. Let's say that the truck is worth 20,000 and I owe 20,000. The trustee would ignore the truck because there's no equity. If the trustee were to sell the truck for $20,000, he'd have to give all the money to Ford Motor Credit, who I'm making my payments to. All right, can I claim that truck exempt? I mean, we actually do those. In our practice, what we would do is list the truck as exempt and claim a $1 exemption. But if the truck is worth 20,000 and I owe 20,000, the exemption is sort of pointless. There's nothing to exempt. The exemption protects you from the trustee. Outside of bankruptcy, the exemption protects you from unsecured creditors. It doesn't protect you from Ford Motor Credit. From any liens that are on the truck. Liens don't go away in bankruptcy. Liens stay attached. I have a very lengthy video on how secured creditors work. All right, so if the truck is worth 20 and I owe 20, the trustee will abandon it. The exemption is sort of doesn't factor in. What if it's worth 20 and I owe 25? That's seems to be pretty common. But it's the same thing. The trustee will just ignore it. I don't need to exempt it because the trustee can't sell it anyway. I don't need to protect that truck from the trustee because he can't sell it anyway. Let's use another example, a house. I own a house that's worth 500,000 and I owe 400, let's say. And the homestead exemption is $100,000. So I would list the house as being worth 500,000. I owe 400,000 to the bank. So I would claim a $100,000 exemption. At that point, the trustee would ignore the house because if the trustee were to sell it for 500, he'd have to pay the bank the 400. He'd have to give me the next 100. He'd have to pay the selling costs. There's nothing left. All right, so, oh, sorry, hang on 1 second. All right, I wanted to check my time. All right, so in the next video, I'm gonna talk about how much is the exemption for cars, how much is it for jewelry, your homestead, your household goods, your furniture, and so the paranoia level doesn't get too high. Your household stuff is all exempt unless there's something of unusual value. Your personal stuff, all the books and things in your house they're all exempt. And you don't have to worry about it. All right. But I want to leave you with, I want to sort of set the table for the next video, where I'm going to talk about what in California, what's called the wild card exemption. All right. The wild card exemption in California is $30,000. That means if you own anything that isn't already exempt or exempt for some other reason, if there's some portion of what you own that is not exempt anyway, that has equity and is not exempt anyway, you can apply the wildcard exemption up to $30,000. So my example with my truck, the first example is it was worth $15,000. I don't owe any money on it. So I claim a $5,000 exemption because it's a truck, because it's a vehicle. In California, provided I can use the wildcard exemption, I would also take $10,000 from the wildcard exemption, apply it to the truck. Now the truck is completely exempt, and I have $20,000 worth of remaining wildcard exemption. All right, just in case, people are watching this, whatever this is a complicated area, exemptions. Don't try to do this yourself. But I made a quick little comment that not everybody in California can use the wildcard exemption. So I want to tell you who can't, and that is somebody who needs the homestead exemption, at least of more than $30,000. So the homestead exemption in California right now, spring of 2021, is at least $300,000. And it's as high as $600,000, depending on which county you live in. If you use the homestead exemption of more than $30,000, you can't also use the wild card. All right. When people call me and they want to tell me all about their creditors and their difficulties, and what I want to know is, do you own a house? If you do you have any equity in it? What I'm trying to figure out is, can you use the wildcard exemption? I don't have to worry quite so much about exactly what you own if I know you can use the wildcard exemption. All right, so this is part 2 of exemptions. I'm going to end it here. If you like the video, click like. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. My firm, it's Resnick, Hayes, Marati in Encino, California. We have 7 lawyers. 4 of our lawyers are certified bankruptcy specialists. You can call us or leave a question in the comment section of the video. So thanks a lot. Bye-bye.